Donald Trump is going to be arraigned. And Marjorie Taylor Greene is, of course, trying her own little version of January 6th. And the mayor of New York City went ahead and told her in a press conference today, calling her out specifically, that this was not going to be like Washington on January 6th. No. The NYPD is going to be there, and they're going to be looking for Terrys who are interested in getting froggy.
This morning, when the police commissioner and I spoke on our morning briefing with the other team, we were clear that tomorrow is a day that's going to draw a great deal of attention to our city. And we know there are many questions around the movement of the city, and we want to make sure that we send a very clear and loud message. As the deputy mayor stated, New York City is always ready. We know that this is a city where our NYPD and other law enforcement entities must be prepared at any given moment for anything to happen in this city. To start, I want to make it clear, the commissioner has stated over and over again, there has been no specific credible threats to our city at this time. And all New Yorkers should go on with their regular activities. That means going to work, going to school. We're going to do our job as we always do. If you usually drive, we're stating take public transportation. It is easy to get around on public transportation because we expect some disruptions and additional traffic. There's a great deal of additional traffic that may come in the city, and there will be street closures near the courts and throughout the city. While there may be some rabble-rousers thinking about coming to our city tomorrow, our message is clear and simple. Control yourselves. New York City is our home, not a playground for your misplaced anger. We are the safest large city in America because we respect the rule of law. And
look at that lady right there. Look at that lady. You want to know what gives me confidence that America ain't done just yet? That steely gaze from the is that, what is that, the head of the police there? I think so. Yeah, that says so much more to the would-be shamans and what have you. Don't with New York City. Don't do it. It ain't Washington on January 6th when Donald Trump was there to say, don't put so many cops in charge. I don't know what that was. Don't put so many, I don't do it, Trump. Don't put so many cops in charge. No. That look, fucking Jesus. That look tells me everything I need to know. But let's keep letting the mayor say his bit.
New York City. And although we have no specific threats, people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is known to spread misinformation and hate speech, she stated she's coming to town. While you're in town, be on your best behavior. As always, we will not allow violence or vandalism of any kind. And if one is caught participating in any act of violence, they will be arrested and held accountable, no matter who you are. And I want to, again, thank the police department, the commissioner, for their response and for the necessary preparation as we deal with this major historical potential event that would take place in the city. This time, I'd like to introduce the police commissioner of the city of New York.
Oh, what was the boss
Thank you,
lady?
Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Do just bear in mind, all right, let's do her courtesy. There we go. Do just bear in mind, at the height of Donald Trump's power, he could summon 10,000 people during what he said was the most crucial moment. he invited them, and there was an air of even legitimacy to it. 10,000 people are what showed up. Amongst them, some specialists, the terrorists of the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys. And I'm going to be fascinated when this finally gets to trial, because we will insist it goes to trial. When the coup is taken to trial, I will be very interested to find out how much communication there was between the White House and the terrorist groups that tried to overthrow the country. But that was then. And 1/10 of that mob is either in prison or awaiting their stay in prison. I don't think the NYPD is going to have a problem. But that said, I am glad that they are being crystal clear right now. And I believe this public warning is going to do a lot to thin those crowds, because the people that were somehow jealous of the J6ers are really going to hesitate after seeing this. Get them, folks.
As always, the NYPD is prepared to ensure that everyone is able to have their voices heard peacefully while exercising their First Amendment rights. We do this work in close collaboration with our federal, state, and local partners, because keeping our city safe is absolutely a collective effort. As the mayor stated, there are no credible or specific threats to New York City at this time. New Yorkers may see an increased police presence in parts of the city and should anticipate intermittent road closures over the next 2 days, particularly in Manhattan. To avoid delays, I too urge everyone to use mass transit when possible. As I said, our job is to facilitate and safeguard the rights of people to express themselves and those going about their daily activities. But I will remind everyone that violence and destruction are not part of legitimate, lawful expression, and it will never be tolerated in our city. The people we serve know this, just as they know that the NYPD will be out there today, tomorrow, and every day to make sure that they are safe. Thank you. Mr. Mayor? Sure. Well, we'll take some questions.
Commissioner, has Laundry, Taylor Green, or anyone else for that matter put forward a comment, and has anyone been granted?
So
I didn't hear what he said. That one thing that's important, though, she specified that they will be out today, tomorrow, and every day. The today was not an accident, because I promise you, it's fresh in their minds as well. The bombs that were placed ahead of January 6th, we still didn't find that person. That was a warning.
the permitting is actually done through City Hall, but I will say that anyone who protests is expected to express themselves peacefully and orderly.
Arrest, or has there been an arrest in a powder incident involving the Grand Office?
That incident is still under investigation at this time.
Commissioner or Mr. Mayor, have you noticed any movements at Port Authority or at the airport? Any influx of people that are coming in that you've noticed and that are coming here for this event? Any estimate on that, or have you not seen it?
We value our relationship with our partners, and we're in constant communication with them. So if they do see an influx of people or something out of the ordinary, they will contact us. At this time, we don't see that happening, but we will have real-time information if that does occur.
Does anyone have specifics? I don't know if this is a question for you, Commissioner, or the Mayor, about where it's, I know you said intermittent road closures, but can we expect at a certain point how many blocks around the courthouse would be closed? Was the FDR driver, any of the highways movement? And will that information be shared with the public?
So there are going to be rolling road closures. As I'm sure you can understand based on the sensitivity of it. It's going to be moving, but we will make sure we have enough officers to facilitate transport throughout the city. There is one area close to Trump Tower that will have a road that is closed just to facilitate his transport. But beyond that, there'll be rolling road closures intermittently through the city. We're trying to have minimal amount of intrusion into city life.
I do want to say this is likely also not entirely to dissuade pro-Trump protesters, but also literally for the guy's safety. I have nothing kind to say about Donald Trump. But as a matter of personal honor, I refuse to let our government be casual with the safety of a former leader of our government, no matter how despised they are. Just because we have to have standards. And I am glad to hear that they are taking that extra precaution. They're closing down the route he's going to take there because it's very public information where it's not like the people who hate Trump are expected to act crazy. It's just any time there's very public information about where a former official is going to be, take extra precaution, and this is good. Particularly given that people will have the time as well as the place.
I wanted to ask, what additional measures is the NYPD taking, not only to protect DA Bragg, but also other members of his office?
Great
We
question.
take any threats or concerns of our elected officials and anyone in the city very seriously. So we have provided some assistance in that regard, and we are investigating any threats that may be made to the DA or any of his staff.
Will the Times Square gun-free zone be moved in and around courthouses?
As you know, a number of laws were passed when we went into having sensitive zones and restricted zones. It's actually an e-felony to carry in some of those zones, even if you have a license. Some of those zones include courthouses, federal buildings, and First Amendment activities. So we're not going to move those. I think responsible gun ownership requires that you know what the laws are, where you are protesting, and we expect everyone to adhere to ours.
So it is possible. Good.
Well, going back to police presence, how many officers do you expect to be on the streets? And also, the Secret Service, I mean, how have they come in and basically told you what to do? Or, I mean, how much control are they having over security?
I'm loving these questions. If you didn't hear, how much did the Secret Service, they're asking, how much did they dictate what's going to happen tomorrow?
We work with the Secret Service all the time. These are our partners. I won't go into how many numbers of police officers will be on the street, but we will have enough to facilitate mobile units if we need to respond to anything. But this is a collaborative effort with our partners in the Secret Commissioner,
NYPD personnel days off suspended or canceled for the interim.
So you're listening there to Keyshawn Sewell, the New York
I
City
was
Police Department Commissioner, along
on.
with the New York Mayor Eric Adams, giving a security briefing about the arrangements ahead of tomorrow's historic day here in the United States and in New York, where Donald Trump will be arraigned and after his indictment on criminal charges. We heard some headlines out of this. They said they're sending a clear and loud message. They're not going to tolerate any sort of violence, and there's no specific or credible threat that there will be any sort of violence tomorrow. And they also a warning of sorts to Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is the conservative congresswoman who urging her to be on her best behavior while leading a protest tomorrow in New York City. Let's go right to CNN's chief law enforcement and intelligence analyst, John Miller, and as well as the CNN senior law enforcement analyst, Chief Ramsey.
This is a question for the comments. Does that mean anything to you at all when they're like, it's a senior law enforcement correspondent or a chief law enforcement correspondent? I theoretically come from this business, although not this level. So I have no idea what that means. What is the difference between a senior correspondent and just a law enforcement correspondent? Is that what you give to somebody instead of a raise as a title? I don't know.
John, the headline, no specific credible threat to the city. What's your reaction?
That's what we were expecting to hear, in that they've been looking at everything from social media posts to bomb threats that have been called in the week before last, and the entire threat picture. And none of it rises to anything where they can say, this is something where we think there's something behind it where it's actually going to occur. That's the good news. The important part from an intelligence standpoint is you have to understand that you're not going to know of every credible threat or what lurks in the shadows. So the bifurcated posture there is they're watching the threat traffic, but they're also prepared for the unknown. And I think that's what the police commissioner was talking about, which is they're not only following the threats, but they're investigating even threats that are posted in social media to say, who's on the other end of that threat? Do they need to be interviewed? Were they serious about the threat? Do they have the capability to carry it out? And so far, they haven't seen anything that crosses the line. But again, they're prepared.
And they're prepared. And Chief, too, the mayor mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene, called on her and others to, quote, be on your best behavior. What do you take away from that stark warning?
Well, what I take away is it doesn't matter who you are. If you break the law, if you engage in any act of violence, you will suffer the consequences, period. And we learned from January 6th, obviously, that these things can turn bad. But having said that, it sounds like the NYPD is prepared. I have no doubt that they are in a position to be able to deal with whatever may come up, both in terms of just the regular control of what takes place on the various sites.
Their producer, whose job it is to switch the camera feeds, got a talking to after this one.
But also having mobile units that can move from point A to point B very rapidly. You know, the mayor and the commissioner both mentioned something that I think people lose sight of oftentimes because we get so focused on the security itself. But for the average New Yorker, they're not interested in what's going on. They just want to get from point A to point B. They want to get to the bank. They want to get to the grocery store. So you have to balance things and keep people informed when you have street closures and things of that nature, so that they can move freely or as freely as they can around the city. And that's a balancing act in and of itself. You try to get people to take public transportation, but that's not always, you know, what people choose to do. So it's a balancing act. So they've got a lot of moving parts. They're dealing with what's going on in terms.
It's 16 seconds.
Of the ex-president, him surrendering to various sites that need to be dealt with. But there's also day-to-day business that goes on in the city. All your resources cannot be in one place. They're going to be handling everything that takes place in New York on that day.
Well, what can you do about this? You don't have to do anything about this, except be reminded that the conspiracy to take over our country was a big one. Yeah, this is Donald Trump's indictment regarding a state crime that he may have done. Really looks like he did, on account of his lawyer went to prison for this very crime. And currently does a podcast largely focused on how his former boss was part of that crime, but nonetheless, innocent till proven guilty. But let's not forget, January 6th happened. All of this security is because January 6th happened. Not all of it, most of it. A lot of the security is indeed there for Trump's own protection. But that specific call out to Marjorie Taylor Greene, that's because she's a MAGA psycho. We have more than 1,000 people in prison on charges relating to an insurrection. And a local lawman, a district attorney, beat the Attorney General of the United States to the punch when it came to indicting Trump. Really soak that in. He had district attorney resources, not attorney general resources. He had a district attorney's staff, not the entire staff of the Department of Justice. He beat Merrick Garland. Remember, Merrick Garland had a whole lot of crimes. He could have charged before now. And maybe we'll find out that he had a really good reason for letting Donald Trump go for years without any punishment. Maybe we'll find that out. I doubt it. And regardless, I certainly wouldn't trust him to go after every fake elector in the 7 states that had fake elector plots. Right now, 2 of those states, just 2 of those states, have state-level investigations into election interference. If you are in one of the 5 outstanding states, in this case, it's not good to be outstanding. If you are in one of those states, linked in the description, by the way, listed in the description, but what the hell I'll say them right now. Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Nevada. Now I got to look at the description. If you were in one of those states, for God's sake, write your attorney general. They are also linked in the description. Which one? Oh, New Mexico. Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Pennsylvania, or Wisconsin. If you are in one of those states, write your attorney general. The link is in the description. Tell them you want a state-level investigation into the fake elector plot. If you rely on Merrick Garland, like they currently are doing, all of them, if you rely on Merrick Garland, I don't believe you're going to get justice. Certainly not when it comes to every one of the fake electors who pretended to be real electors. In other words, they tried to nullify the votes of the people from that state. If you're in one of those states, start the state investigation. We are responsible for where we live. If you live in Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada, Pennsylvania, or Wisconsin, and you've never written your attorney general, you don't have to feel bad. Maybe this is the first time you're hearing about it. But if the sun rises tomorrow and you haven't written your attorney general saying that you demand justice be done, you demand a state-level investigation, then you do bear some of the responsibility. It is our responsibility to deal with the areas wherein we live so that collectively we have a better country. Those 5 Democrat attorney generals are all either too lazy or too cowardly or entirely too trusting of Merrick Garland. I don't really care which it is. We need state-level investigations going. Give it some thought, folks. Patrick Kibido says, comments I've heard on DeSantis are that he is not bright. No personality, not creative, original, not flattering. Christ. Yeah. I haven't heard good things about the man either, but good Lord, let's hope his political career is short. I really do hope the fever breaks in the U.S., and I suspect as Trump is in court, you're going to have a sea change. The reason being so much of the fanaticism around MAGA, at least from what I can see, just comes off the snowballing ridiculousness of people who are afraid to admit how wrong they were. I mean, it's becoming increasingly apparent. And one thing we often don't think about, I mean, when we imagine the other side, the opposition, we tend not to humanize them. And I'm not saying be sympathetic, because this is undefensible behavior. But don't forget they're humans either. You ever dated somebody who was just a drag? They were just rude to people, maybe, and you didn't know that when you started dating them? But time went on, it became harder and harder to apologize for them. You ever dated somebody like that? You ever had a friend like that? always starts business with people for no dang reason. You got to apologize. They always get way too drunk at a party. You got to apologize, drag them out. It's tiring, is my point. It's exhausting. MAGA folks, if you're willing to humanize them, you might be able to picture a present, perhaps, but certainly a near future, where they're sick of having to follow every lurid detail of this thing because their friends and family keep saying, well, what about this? Well, what about this? Well, what about this? So on and so on and so forth, until finally, one by one by one, they're going to say, you know, I don't like the guy that much to begin with. It was the taxes I liked. That's how it happened. Yes, there's going to be people that have a come to Jesus moment, but I think we're going to have a lot more people that just get sick of having to defend this guy and just get sick of having their friends and family tell them, hey, remember how you said Trump definitely didn't do that thing? Here he is in court admitting to doing that thing. Here's the transcript because he couldn't lie under oath. Here's the lawyer proving that that conspiracy theory you believe is nonsense. They're going to get sick of it. As tired as we get fighting this stuff, it's possible to forget that they have a finite amount of energy as well. And there's less of them. And by the way, they're wrong. Being wrong is a special kind of weakness. When you're fundamentally wrong, all the adapter kits you slap on that mentality, it's just not going to be as good as being right. Stay strong. Stay energetic. Contact your state's attorney general if you live in one of those 5 states. If you've already contacted them, contact them again. Remember, your state's attorney general is also a human being, which means they also have a finite amount of energy. Make it more tiring for them to say no to you than to just open the damn case and get it over with. Wear them down.